Alright, so I never thought I'd be the guy to write something like this, but here we are. I'm posting because I had this insane series of events that basically cracked me open and forced me to see who I really was, and honestly, who I wasn't. It all started one morning when I stepped on the scale. Now, I know that sounds cliche, but hear me out. I wasn't massively overweight, but I was definitely coasting through life. Mediocre job performance, half-baked relationships, procrastinating on every dream I ever said I had. I had goals written in notebooks from years ago that were collecting dust. But that morning, looking down at the number flashing back at me, I realized it wasn't just about weight. It was about everything. My lack of discipline, my avoidance, my comfort zone that I had built like a fortress around me. The number wasn't just my weight. It was my whole damn life, staring back at me, mocking me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt angry. At myself. At the way I'd let people walk all over me. At the promises I kept breaking to myself. That was the spark. The wake-up call. I didn't know it yet, but that was the start of a journey filled with betrayal, setbacks, and a hell of a lot of pain. But also, growth I never thought I'd be capable of. So, fueled by that weird mix of shame and anger, I decided to start small. I told myself, all right, man, no more excuses. One goal. One. I picked running because it felt simple. Shoes, street, lungs. No fancy membership, no equipment. I set a ridiculous goal for myself. Run every morning for 30 days, no matter what. Rain, snow, whatever. Just show up. At first, I told no one. I didn't want the accountability because I didn't trust myself. But then I slipped and mentioned it to a close friend of mine. Let's call him D. I thought he'd be supportive, maybe even join me. Instead, he laughed. Straight up laughed in my face. Bro, you? Running? You'll quit in a week. That stung more than I expected. D had always been my go-to guy, and instead of encouragement, I got mockery. That's when it hit me. Sometimes betrayal isn't some dramatic act. Sometimes it's just someone you trust showing you they don't believe in you. I went home that night pissed off. Like, really pissed off. Not just at him, but at myself for letting other people's voices decide what I was capable of. So the next morning, I laced up, and I ran. Badly. Painfully. Every breath felt like fire. But I kept going, because quitting would have meant he was right. And I wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. By week 2, I was actually starting to feel good about myself. Not great. My lungs still hated me, but I wasn't collapsing anymore. I even shaved 2 minutes off my first run time. I was feeling proud, man. Like maybe I could actually pull this off. And then life, being life, threw a brick at my face. One morning, I woke up to an email from my boss. Subject line. Meeting today, mandatory. No context. No explanation. Just dread. Turns out, the company was doing layoffs, and I was on the chopping block. Just like that, paycheck gone. Stability gone. I walked out of that meeting in a fog. My first thought wasn't even about money. It was, why now? I had finally started pushing myself, finally started trying, and the universe decides to pull the rug out from under me? On the way home, I almost didn't run. I wanted to crawl into bed, binge junk food, and wallow. But then I remembered something. If I quit now, D was right. If I quit now, the old me was back in charge. So I ran that night. Not in the morning, not at my usual time, but at night, through the city streets, tears and sweat mixing together until I couldn't tell which was which. That run hurt more than any other, but it was the first time I realized I wasn't just running from something. I was running towards something, even if I didn't know what yet. So here's where things went from life kicking me around to straight-up betrayal. I was still reeling from the layoff, trying to figure out what to do next. Rent was coming up, savings weren't exactly stacked, and I was juggling stress like knives. But I kept running. That was the one thing I held on to. One night, I stopped by a bar to meet some friends. Needed a distraction. And guess who was there? D. The same friend who laughed at me when I said I was running. He was sitting with a group, laughing it up, but when I walked over, the whole vibe shifted. You know that awkward silence when people have clearly been talking about you? Yeah, that. Turns out, D had been clowning me behind my back. Not just to that group, but apparently to half our mutual circle. Calling me Mr. Midlife Crisis, saying I was trying too hard, even betting people I wouldn't last a month. When I heard that, it felt like someone punched me in the chest. This wasn't just some light joke anymore. This was betrayal. This was my closest friend rooting for me to fail, publicly. I left early that night, humiliated and angry. On the walk home, I thought about quitting, not just running, but everything. Why push myself if the people closest to me wanted me to crash and burn? But then, another thought crept in. Maybe this was the exact reason I needed to push harder. Not to prove him wrong, but to prove to myself that his version of me wasn't the truth. That night, I made a decision. I was cutting him off. Not just from my circle, but from my headspace. And weirdly, it felt like the first time in years I actually took control of my own story. After cutting D off, I felt this mix of freedom and loneliness. Like I'd just dropped a weight off my shoulders, but at the same time, that weight had been a friend-shaped anchor for years. Losing him hurt more than I wanted to admit. I doubled down on running. It became my therapy, my job, my everything. But the truth? I was still unemployed, still broke, still carrying this low-grade panic 24/7. I kept telling myself, as long as I keep moving, I'm fine. Then, about 3 weeks in, my body gave out. I was halfway through a run when I felt this sharp, stabbing pain in my knee. It was the kind of pain that makes your stomach flip instantly. I tried to push through it, but every step felt like a knife twisting deeper. I hobbled home, collapsed on my couch, and just sat there staring at the ceiling. My brain spiraled. I can't run. If I can't run, I can't hold it together. If I can't hold it together, I'm screwed. I'll be real with you. I almost quit everything that night. Running, job hunting, life goals, all of it. It felt like the universe was screaming at me to stop trying. But then something weird happened. As I sat there icing my knee, I realized I had two choices. Let the injury be my excuse to slide back into the old me. Find another way forward, even if it wasn't the way I planned. That was the first time it clicked. Achieving a goal isn't about the path. It's about refusing to stop moving, no matter how many times the path changes. And that realization, painful as it was, kept me from completely breaking that night. With my knee busted, running was off the table. At first, I sulked. I told myself it wasn't fair, that I'd finally found momentum, only to get sidelined by my own body. But then I remembered that choice I made on the couch. Keep moving, no matter what. So I pivoted. I started swimming. The local community pool had dirt cheap passes, and honestly, at first I hated it. It felt awkward, clumsy. I wasn't fast. I swallowed half the pool most days, and I'd leave with my lungs burning in a totally new way. But something about being in the water gave me this strange calm. I couldn't pound the pavement, but I could float, glide, push. And here's the crazy part. One night at the pool, I bumped into an old coworker I hadn't seen in years. We got to talking, and when he heard I'd been laid off, he told me his new company was hiring. He said, "Send me your resume, man. I'll put in a word." That hit me like lightning. Here I was, mourning the loss of my routine, but by pivoting, literally getting into a different lane, I stumbled into an opportunity. I remember walking home that night, wet hair dripping into my hoodie, thinking, maybe the universe isn't against me. Maybe it's just pushing me sideways until I land where I'm supposed to be. It was the first time in weeks that I felt hope again. So I sent my resume to that company my old coworker mentioned, half expecting nothing to come of it. But to my surprise, I got an interview. Not weeks later, literally days. I cleaned myself up, borrowed a decent blazer from my brother, and walked into that building nervous as hell. But here's the thing. I wasn't the same guy I was a month ago. Running, swimming, clawing my way through setbacks. It had toughened me up. I didn't try to BS them or act like I had it all figured out. I just told them the truth. I lost my last job, but I've been working on myself every single day. I don't quit. They offered me a position. On the spot. I swear I almost cried right there in the office. But, because life always has to throw in a twist, when I left the interview, I checked my phone and saw a message from D. The last person I wanted to hear from. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't congratulations. It was a screenshot. A screenshot of a group chat I wasn't in, where he'd been making jokes about how corporate wouldn't want a loser like me. Seeing that stung way more than it should have. I had just climbed out of the darkest hole of my life, and here was someone I once called a brother trying to shove me right back down. For a few hours, I let it eat at me. I even considered messaging him back with all the things I wanted to say. But then it hit me. This job, this fresh start, this new version of me. None of it had anything to do with him. His bitterness wasn't my burden anymore. So I blocked his number. Permanently this time. No more drama, no more noise. Just me, moving forward. That was the moment I finally understood. Some betrayals are gifts in disguise. Starting the new job felt like stepping into another universe. The pace was faster, the expectations higher, and honestly, I was terrified I'd be exposed as a fraud. But here's the weird part. Every time that little voice in my head whispered you can't do this, I remembered the runs, the late-night swims, the pain in my knee, the betrayal from D. I'd already been tested. This job wasn't going to break me. The first month was a blur of long hours, coffee-fueled mornings, and learning on the fly. And shockingly, I was good at it. Better than I expected. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I felt like I was actually building something. But then chaos knocked on the door again. My landlord decided he was selling the building I lived in, which meant I had 30 days to find a new place. No warning, no options. Just a letter slipped under my door. So here I was. New job I was still getting the hang of. Knee still in recovery. Now, facing homelessness if I didn't scramble fast. I'll be real, I almost lost it. The old me would have crumbled, gone into panic mode, maybe even quit the job just to deal with it. But this time, I took a breath. I remembered what it felt like to push through pain, to pivot when I couldn't run anymore. Instead of spiraling, I treated the apartment hunt like another training session. Every day after work, I hustled, called, viewed, applied. By some miracle, I found a small but decent place across town just in time. And moving in there, alone, surrounded by boxes and silence, I felt something strange. Not fear, not exhaustion, but pride. Like I was finally steering the ship, even in the storm. The first week in the new apartment was rough. On the surface, I had momentum, new job, new place, new routine. But once the dust settled, the silence in that tiny apartment hit me harder than I expected. No roommates, no D, no familiar neighborhood noise. Just me, my thoughts, and 4 blank walls. At first, I told myself it was fine, this was the cost of growth. But deep down, I felt lonely in a way I hadn't felt in years. Running used to drown that out, then swimming, then job chaos, then moving. But now, with no immediate crisis, the emptiness crept in. One night, I scrolled through social media. Mistake number 1. I saw pictures of D at a party, surrounded by the same group that once used to be my circle. It twisted my gut. These were people who had known me for years, and now they were laughing with the guy who tore me down. That night, I sat on the floor of my new place, eating takeout straight out of the container, wondering if maybe I'd traded belonging for progress. Like, yeah, I was achieving things, but at what cost? I didn't break down, but I came close. For the first time, I questioned if cutting D off had been the right move. Maybe betrayal was better than being completely alone. But then I caught myself. That thought, that desperate little whisper, was the same one that used to keep me chained to old habits and old people. And I realized something. Sometimes the hardest part of growth isn't the pain or the setbacks. It's the loneliness. And maybe that was just another test I had to push through. A couple weeks into living at the new place, I'd built a routine: work, swim, crash, repeat. It kept me functional, but I was still dragging around that heavy loneliness like an anchor. One evening, I was at the pool late, last lap before closing. As I dragged myself out of the water, there was this older guy sitting on the bench near the lockers, just watching. Not in a creepy way, more like he was waiting for someone. When I walked past, he said, "You're out here a lot. You training for something?" I froze. No one had noticed me in weeks. I muttered something like, "Nah, just trying to get my life together." He chuckled and said, "Looks like you already are." That hit me harder than it should have. Here was a total stranger, a man who didn't know me, who hadn't seen me fail, who wasn't rooting against me. And yet, he saw me. He saw effort. We ended up talking in the parking lot for almost an hour. His name was Paul, retired firefighter, swam every week just to stay loose. He told me he'd watched me go from awkward splashing to smooth laps over the past month and said, "Most people quit when it hurts. You didn't. That matters more than speed." I went home that night with something I hadn't felt in a long time: validation. Not from friends, not from social media, not from proving someone wrong, just from a neutral pair of eyes recognizing the grind. It reminded me that sometimes the encouragement we crave doesn't come from where we expect, and that's okay. After that conversation with Paul, something shifted inside me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could aim higher, like I didn't have to settle for just surviving anymore. A few days later, my company announced an internal challenge, a 6-week project with a huge bonus for whoever could bring the most innovative idea to the table. Everyone in the office groaned. They thought it was impossible, but my gut told me to try. I almost didn't. Fear crept in like a familiar old friend. What if you fail? What if they laugh? What if you embarrass yourself? But I remembered every betrayal, every setback, every night I almost quit running, swimming, and job hunting. I remembered Dee laughing at me, the layoffs, the knee injury, the landlord drama. And then I thought, if I let fear stop me now, all of that pain was wasted. So I said yes. The first week was brutal. Ideas were rejected, plans failed, spreadsheets crashed, and my brain felt like mush every evening. At one point, I almost walked away, but I kept Paul's words in my head. Most people quit when it hurts. You didn't. That matters more than speed. By week 3, things started clicking. My ideas were shaping into something tangible. My boss noticed. My teammates started asking for input. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just surviving. I was contributing, creating, and taking charge of my life in a way I never thought possible. Week 6 rolled around, and the tension in the office was insane. Everyone was waiting for the announcement. I felt nervous, yes, but also proud. I had poured everything into this challenge, and even if I didn't win, I knew I had pushed myself further than I ever had before. When the results were finally posted, my jaw dropped. I won. Not by a little, by a landslide. The bonus was bigger than I could have imagined, and my boss gave me a public shout-out in front of the whole office. I felt like I could finally exhale after months of struggle. But just as I was riding that high, my phone buzzed. Another message from Dee. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't even subtle. It was just a short text. Congrats, I guess. Didn't think you had it in you. Weird. At first, I felt the old sting. The betrayal, the humiliation, the laughter from months ago, it all rushed back. But then something clicked. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need him at all. My victories weren't for him. They were for me. I blocked him one last time. Permanently. And that moment, the mixture of triumph and closure, hit me in a way I didn't expect. The victory tasted sweeter because it was mine. Every setback, every betrayal, every painful step had led to this. After the challenge, I started reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few months. The betrayals, the layoffs, the injuries, the loneliness, they all felt like brutal teachers. And in hindsight, I realized they weren't there to stop me. They were there to show me what I was capable of when I refused to quit. I learned that pushing toward a goal isn't linear. It's messy, painful, confusing. Sometimes you pivot. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes the people you thought would support you try to tear you down. And that's okay. What matters is showing up again and again, even when it hurts. I also realized that betrayal isn't always about malicious intent. Sometimes it's just someone reflecting their own limitations back at you. And when you stop letting those limitations define you, you unlock something powerful, the ability to keep moving no matter what. I started keeping a small notebook, writing down every win, even tiny ones. It reminded me that progress isn't just a goal. It's a habit, a mindset, a muscle you strengthen by refusing to stop. And the strangest thing? I began to enjoy the struggle. Not because suffering is fun, but because I learned that every setback was a push forward disguised as pain. After months of chaos, setbacks, and unexpected victories, I started formalizing what had worked for me, my personal blueprint for achieving any goal. It wasn't complicated, but it was brutal in its honesty. Start small, start now. Don't wait for the perfect moment or perfect conditions. Just take the first step, no matter how awkward or painful. Embrace setbacks. Injuries, layoffs, betrayals, they aren't signals to quit. They're part of the training. Pivot when necessary, but never stop moving. Cut toxic influences. I realize some people are more invested in your failure than your success. Protect your energy. Distance yourself from them. Find neutral encouragement. Sometimes, support comes from the most unexpected places, strangers, mentors, even random conversations. Pay attention to those voices. Document progress. Write it down, track it, celebrate it. Seeing small wins stack up fuels momentum like nothing else. Refuse validation from the wrong people. D could mock me. The world could scoff. But my only measure of success was my own growth and effort. Applying this blueprint hasn't been easy, but it's worked. And here's the wildest part. Once I started pushing beyond what I thought were my limits, I kept discovering new limits I never knew existed. It became less about achieving a single goal and more about proving, over and over, that quitting is never the only option. Looking back, I barely recognized the person I was at the start of this journey. The guy weighed down by self-doubt, coasting through life, letting other people's opinions define him. He's gone. What replaced him is messy, exhausted, occasionally terrified, but alive. The betrayals hurt. Losing D, getting laid off, the knee injury, the landlord's notice, they all hurt. But here's the thing. Those moments forced me to confront myself. They pushed me to act when I wanted to hide, to pivot when I wanted to quit, and to build resilience I didn't think I had. If I could give advice to anyone facing setbacks, betrayal, or the fear of failing at a big goal, it would be this. Start moving. Don't wait for motivation. Start anyway. Expect chaos. Life will throw curveballs. Pivot, adapt, keep moving. Cut ties with toxicity. Some people will try to hold you back, not out of malice, but because they can't see your potential. Protect your energy. Celebrate the small wins. Momentum is built on tiny victories that add up. Trust yourself. Ultimately, the only approval you need is your own. I learned that achieving a goal isn't just about reaching the finish line. It's about discovering what you're capable of along the way. Pain, betrayal, and setbacks are not obstacles to stop you. They're proof you're actually pushing boundaries. So yeah, life threw me more chaos than I thought I could handle. But now I know I can handle it. And so can you.